Pause the podcast you're listening to right now and subscribe to Ghost Town.
Ghost Town is me, Rebecca Lieb.
And me, Jason Horton.
And we explore all kinds of weird history,
true crime,
hauntings,
paranormal events, and more.
We cover the Slender Man stabbing, Tesla's death ray, the D.B. Cooper copycat, the cheerleader murder plot,
Heaven's Gate, the Lars Midtank mystery, and Tuesday's Child, Ellie's first satanic magazine, just to name a few.
You can find Ghost Town on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
In 1587, a colony vanished. I'm Jason Horton, and this is Strange Year. The Middle Ages were a thing of the past in the 16th century. However, one of America's oldest unsolved mysteries was very present and made 1587 a strange year. The Lost Colony of Roanoke, August 1587. In August 1587, after two previous attempts, one exploratory and one only lasting 10 months, a group of about 115 English settlers arrived on Roanoke Island off the coast of what is now North Carolina. Later that year, John White, governor of the new colony, sailed back to England to get new supplies. But as he arrived, a major war broke out between England and Spain, and Queen Elizabeth I called on every available ship to fight the Spanish Armada. Nearly 3 years later, in August 1590, John White finally returned to Roanoke, where he had left his wife and daughter, and his infant granddaughter, who was Virginia Dare, the first English child born in America, as well as the other settlers. Everyone was gone without a trace, and only a few clues. A single word, Croatoan, carved into a wooden post, and the letters C-R-O carved into trees within the colony's borders. No one really knows what happened to the lost colony of Roanoke. The word Croatoan was the name of an island south of Roanoke that was home to a Native American tribe of the same name. Theories include the colonists were killed or abducted by Native Americans, or tried to sail back to England and got lost at sea, or they moved further inland and were absorbed by a friendly tribe. Governor John White was the first person to discover the colonists' disappearance, and he reported everything he saw in a letter. There were no bones like those that had been left behind in the 1585 colony. The houses had been taken down, not destroyed or burned. The Croatoan carving didn't indicate distress with the Maltese cross. Everything pointed to the settlers simply having picked up and left. In White's opinion, they moved 50 miles into the Main, arguably meaning they moved inland into the forest of North Carolina. Another explanation is that the Roanoke settlers fell victim to the Spanish, whose settlement was just down the coast in Florida. It is certain that the Spanish in the West Indies were aware of the colonists' presence. One Roanoke settler named Darby Glenn left the 1587 expedition once it set ashore in Puerto Rico to take on supplies. He later reported he told the Spanish officials the location of the Roanoke settlement. The opinion of Johns Hopkins University anthropologist Lee Miller, the colonists wandered into a violent shift into the balance of power among inland tribes. Natives with whom the colonists were friendly lost their hold over the area, and Native Americans hostile to the settlers took control. Roanoke colonists made the trip inland when it happened. The men would have likely been killed and the women and children captured as slaves. The colonists would have then been traded along a route that spanned the U.S. coast from present-day Georgia to Virginia. It wasn't until Jamestown was settled 20 years later that a search was actually made for the missing inhabitants. Weather hadn't permitted it when they finally returned in 1590. Rumors came back to them about fair-haired, blue-eyed Indians, as well as English-style homes and clothing being worn in the area. However, trying to search a site 100 miles away 20 years later would have made it very unlikely they could have found the people. There is a general belief that the failure of the colony was due to disease and hunger and caused the survivors to disperse into the local native population. The Lost Colony Project is trying to track down DNA in the modern population in hopes of proving that theory. I learned about the Lost Colony of Roanoke from a history book in school, and it was the first example of an unsolved mystery that I became obsessed with. If you have any information or theories on the Lost Colony of Roanoke, feel free to message me on Instagram at StrangeYearPod. Please rate and review 5 stars wherever you're listening, and if you're a Spotify user, just search Strange Year Pod and you can follow the show from there. If you'd like to listen to another unsolved mystery, check out Ghost Town Podcast, episode 89, titled Flight 19. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back next week for another episode of Strange Year. Pause the podcast you're listening to right now and subscribe to Ghost Town.
Ghost Town is me, Rebecca Lieb.
And me, Jason Horton.
And we explore all kinds of weird history,
true crime,
hauntings,
paranormal events, and more.
We've covered the Slender Man stabbing, Tesla's death ray, the D.B. Cooper copycat, the cheerleader murder plot,
Heaven's Gate, the Lars Mid-Tank mystery, and Tuesday's Child, Ellie's first satanic magazine, just to name a few.
You can find Ghost Town on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
You do things your own way. You make things your own, just the way you like them. Your bank should do that for you too. The Bank of Clark is the bank for that. From banking to lending to wealth management, when you need financial services built just for you, we're the bank for that. Find out what banking designed just for you is all about. Call 1-800-650-8723. Visit your local Bank of Clark branch today or go to bankofclark.bank. That's bankofclark.bank. We're the bank for that. Member FDIC.
Leftovers, or the DMV,
Number 97,
or house cleaning, or
Chumba Casino always brings the fun. Play over 100 different games online for free from anywhere. You could redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. Live the Chumba life. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
You do things your own way. You make things your own, just the way you like them. Your bank should do that for you too. The Bank of Clark is the bank for that. From banking to lending to wealth management, when you need financial services built just for you, we're the bank for that. Find out what banking designed just for you is all about. Call 1-800-650-8723. Visit your local Bank of Clark branch today or go to bankofclark.bank. That's bankofclark.bank. We're the bank for that. Member FDIC.